Right, good evening. Welcome to another episode of Disqualified Dads. This is live stream number 4. Now, I've got a couple of little announcements to make, a couple of little updates before I bring my guest Mike on. But before we get to that, right, firstly, shout out to Mr. Daniel Ryan again for last week's live stream. It had a very good result. We answered a lot of questions. A lot of people have reached out to me, and everyone that dialed in, thank you to everyone that dialed in and took part. Also, another announcement, I am now taking super chats. I have now reached another threshold on YouTube where they can allow me to take super chats. So everyone in the comment, try and at least send what you can, $1.99, $2.99, whatever it is. Send in your super chats, any comments with super chats. Obviously, I'll have to read them out first. So send in your super chats, don't be tight. Help a brother out here. And yes, now without further ado, I'm not going to rattle on too much. Mike is the founder of Paternity Fraud UK and the Falsely Accused Network UK. He does a lot of good stuff, helping out a lot of people, supporting a lot of fathers. So I'm not going to rattle on too much. I'll bring Mike on and let's dive straight into this. Mike, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Farouk. Thank you.
Welcome to Disqualified Dads. Mike, tell us a bit about yourself. Tell us a bit about your network, your background, before we get into this.
Yeah, so my name's Mike. I'm from Manchester. And what got me where I am today was that I'm a victim of paternity fraud. That's what started all this off. When I found out I was a victim of paternity fraud, I realised there was actually no specific help for anybody in the United Kingdom in relation to paternity fraud. So I made the decision that I'll have to do it. I'll set something up. So I did. And what I've realised is that the problem of paternity fraud out there is much bigger, unfortunately, than we'd all like to admit.
Okay, so just so I understand, Mike, you said you found yourself in this situation of paternity fraud, which we're going to go into, and you're happy to talk about this firstly, obviously. Yeah, okay. So before we go into that, you found yourself in this situation of paternity fraud. Now, before we go any further, what do you mean when you say paternity fraud? Explain paternity fraud, because look, let me just give you a little back insight in what I was thinking. Yeah. So when we spoke last week, right? You started talking about paternity fraud and whatnot. Now, after our conversation, I started thinking, and I thought, okay, paternity fraud, because unless it's one of those things again, unless you've been through something like that, I think the turmoil and horror will not resonate. So I put myself in those shoes for a few minutes, and I thought, okay, imagine that, right? So obviously, I understand the pain of the lost losing contact with children. I understand the devastation. And again, with the family court system, until you go through it, the word divorce and separation is just a word until you go through it. And then there's shock and horror. And when you don't see your kids, that shock and horror, your whole world has come crashing down. You're going through this turmoil and chaos, and you think, am I the only one here? Why am I suffering? Why no one talked about it? The devastation. And that's when I thought, right, okay, paternity fraud is just another word. Or you find out your child's not yours. You've heard these things on TV, on flipping EastEnders or Coronation Street, whatever. You watch it, the drama, you hear someone talking about it or getting upset. It's just quiet. Don't say much. You can never fully resonate. And then for a moment, I thought, let me just try and sit in that moment for a minute. Yeah, the child that you have raised from a baby, you've bottle fed it, you've done the nappies, the little walks when they took their first steps, and looking at you with that unconditional love. And one day you realize this is not your child. And that moment just hit me, the reality of that devastation. And I realized, look, family court is one thing, losing contact with your children, being falsely accused, all of that is horrible. But for me, this is just one notch further in the devastation. It's a notch higher up. And I don't know how, I have no, look, I'm not even going to pretend to know or understand, but that's why you're here. So look, that's what hit me. And that's when I really, gave it some thought, and I thought we need to really dissect this. So you tell me from your perspective, what is paternity fraud?
Okay, so paternity fraud is when a woman will lie to a man and say that the child that she's carrying is his, when she either knows for a fact that the child isn't, or at least is reckless to the truth of it. So she would know that there could be a doubt because she's been sleeping around. And then the devastation that causes, not just to men, and this is what I will talk about tonight, it actually affects women, this too. About 40% of my phone calls on the helpline come from women, believe it or not. The devastation is what I would call Premier League trauma. I'm talking deadly trauma. This is
lethal force. Let's call it lethal force. This is lethal force. It's as simple as, yeah.
I speak to men who are suicidal. I speak to very distressed relatives. So it could be I call them wronged grandmothers. I get a lot of
extended family, yeah. The extended family also suffer, yeah, clearly.
And the men I speak to on that helpline are deeply, deeply traumatized when this secret comes out.
When they realise this child is not theirs, the child they've been raising is not theirs. Okay, right, Mike, before we go into the full story, I don't want to hang about too long, we'll sort of dive in, but before we go there, just give us a little bit about, obviously, just to touch on your background. I know you work on also, you also run the Falsely Accused Network. Just give us a little brief overview of your work, what you do, and then we'll dive straight into your story, how this came about. I mean, we're going to take our time and go through it. So just give us a little intro, a little bit more background about yourself and your organizations. And also, before you start, if anyone's got any questions for Mike regarding this situation or any other situation, put them in the chat. I'll put them to Mike when I get the opportunity. And before the end of the stream, I'm going to put a link in the chat. If you want to join the stream and talk directly to Mike, take this opportunity. If you want to remain anonymous, just leave your camera off, but I'll give you an opportunity to come onto the stream to speak to Mike. And Mike, take it away. Tell us a bit about yourself and your background, how you got here.
For myself is that, I'm just an ordinary working class man from Manchester who, unfortunately,
Mancunian, you're Mancunian.
I am indeed. I'm a Manchester City supporter, if anybody's wondering out there. That's pretty much my background. Got nothing really more to say on that. But paternity fraud led me here. But then what happened was, what I came to realise is that there's another huge problem out there, which is false allegations of domestic abuse. It is endemic. It is unbelievably serious, and the amount of false allegations that are being thrown around at the moment against men in particular does affect women, but I can give you a stat on that. We've done 290 calls on our helpline for people, and because I do say anyone who's been falsely accused can ring us. We've had 6 phone calls of women. 5 of them were falsely accused by another woman. 1 is claiming to be falsely accused by a man that I've spoke to so far. So this is hitting men for false allegations endemic. So we run a support for men, which is it's for anybody, but men. It's predominantly men that ring me. So
it's predominantly men that get. Let's be straight about this. The false allegation aspect of this is predominantly men.
Yep.
It's predominantly men that get hit with this. They are the victims of false allegations more than women. That's just statistically it's the fact.
Yeah, absolutely. It's horrendous, the stories that I listen to on a daily basis on that. So we have a helpline, which is, as far as I know, it's the only UK helpline available out there for men that have been falsely accused. We can link people up with trusted solicitors. Again, not many people can afford a solicitor. The prices are skyrocketing, are very high. Mm-hmm. So we can link them up with paralegal Mackenzie friends. We can link them up with trusted therapists that we know. And we have a support group as well, which is 24 hours, 7 days a week access. All men that have been falsely accused. So they can get that emotional support, and help through that. That's that side. And Paternity Fraud UK comes under the umbrella, but it's separate. That is dedicated to paternity fraud victims, and that's anybody that's affected by that.
And did you start that after Falsely Accused Network, or was it at the same time?
Paternity Fraud UK came first.
Oh, Paternity Fraud. Sorry, my bad. Paternity Fraud UK came first, and then you put the falsely accused network there as well. Okay.
And there's other areas we're going to be looking at as well to expand that network, so that men or women actually, but again predominantly men are going to ring us, are going to have full support now. The days are over where men are being left to rot.
Absolutely. Listen, that's a very profound point. Absolutely. Okay, Mike, do me a favor. So let's dive into this. Let's start at the, obviously, Paternity Fraud UK network came first because obviously of your own experience. Yeah. Now, obviously, this is a subject where I can understand, same as the falsely accused, getting a non-mole, going for the family court, losing your children. It is as I've said to other fathers, or many fathers, they hide away because there's a humiliation to it, yeah? Mm-hmm. And that's just a family court, losing your kids. As a father, you're completely emasculated. So, like you said, this is elite. This is Premier League paternity fraud. And I can only imagine, I'm trying to articulate it, like when I put myself in those shoes, the level as a man, like if a man goes through, like I said, women suffer from this as well, but I can only understand it from a man's perspective that you'll be not just the heartbreak of finding that a child is not yours, the child that you are bonded with, but the emasculation as a man. You feel totally demasculated, potentially, I'm only, like I said, if I'm wrong, Tony, but completely worthless. And I mean, I'm not even trying to articulate it anymore. So can you talk us through the whole journey from the start, nice and slow, in as much detail as possible, of how you came to be here? Like, take your time, how you got with the ex and when it started and how the relationship was, and go into detail. I really want you to go into this, yeah, so that others know that they're not alone out there, yeah.
No problem. Just so people I have to choose my language very carefully. I obviously won't be naming any names.
No names.
So I'll say the ex. And when I talk about, I'm going to use the word the child. That's the child that I was led to believe. I want to keep it like that. Okay.
Yeah. No. So, absolutely.
That's just, yeah. So I met my ex. It was around 2011. I was a DJ at the time, mobile DJ, and I met her and went out on a date with her, one or two dates, and there was just something not quite right about. I couldn't put my finger on it at first. Very difficult for me to articulate what it was that was just something a bit off about her. But there was something off about her. But she was persistent and she was incredibly nice, and the relationship blossomed from that. And then we got married a couple of years later.
So you went out for a couple. So you met, just so I'm stay with it. Yeah, I apologise if I keep interrupting. So you were a DJ. You were a DJ. You were out, and obviously the clubbing. Was it a clubbing scene? You were out there on the clubbing scene.
It was like a pub. I used to do work in pubs and
whatever.
I made it to clubs.
Oh, sorry, my bad. Yeah, I'm thinking, what's that place? Mallorca, or what's the other one? Tenerife. I've got these visions of that in my head. You're right. Okay, sorry, I got a bit carried. My imagination got carried away. So look, you're in the pub sort of scene, doing a bit of DJing. You met this lady, went on a couple of dates, and then you went out consecutive for a couple of years, sort of thing. So you had a feeling, you were saying that something wasn't quite right, but it was good enough to hang about, sort of thing. Like, would you say?
Yeah, it was very strange whenever I think back at this. I remember thinking something not right about her, and I couldn't say well because she was incredibly nice. She was really, really nice. Almost
Ibiza. Someone just put in the chat Ibiza. That's what I was thinking. I was thinking Ibiza. Yes. Sorry. Carry on.
Okay. So yeah. Anyway, we got married, and then it became apparent that she had quite bad mental health problems. She told me after we were married she suffered from something called borderline personality disorder, which I'd never heard of. And I certainly did my research into it at the time, like on the NHS website. And I don't think even when you read it on the NHS website about borderline personality disorder, it doesn't really tell you how serious it is. And
yes.
It made our relationship very difficult. Let's put it mildly. It wasn't very pleasant.
I think when you say borderline personality disorder, and even if you read up on it, I just want to put it out for the viewers there, yeah, where unless you have engaged in long-term conversation or interaction or a relationship with someone with borderline personality disorder, you will know in your gut, like you said, 2 years, you knew something didn't quite fit or something wasn't right. You can't pinpoint it, you can't articulate it. It's difficult to explain to someone else what the issue is, but you know when you're dealing with that person. So yeah, that's what it is. But carry on.
It's something I've forgotten to mention that I just realised. When I first met her, she told me these horror stories of how all her exes have abused her.
Yeah, classic.
She's been
She's a
all sorts
victim.
of terrible things have happened to her, and I actually believed her. I thought, why would anybody lie about that? That's just. We'll come back to that later. So I'm going to skip over bits of it now. We get to 2017 around October, November of that year, and I'd had enough. The relationship was not working for me. I was, what I now know, I was emotionally and psychologically abused by that woman. I'm not afraid to say that publicly. And I made a plan to leave. So if you've ever been with a borderline woman, you know that they love you and hate you. It's weird.
Love
They
bombing.
love you.
The official term is that's very true. They love you. The thing with this, with the borderline personality disorder, they genuinely love you. It's not that she don't love you. She legitimately, on some weird space, they actually love you to the point where they want to control you every movement. They have to be in full control. That's the weird thing. And then they love bomb you. So 1 minute they love bomb you. It's called love bombing. These are what men are generally accused of when it's this coercive control. But they love bomb you 1 minute. When they know they pushed it too far, they can gauge your emotional responses to a T. They know just enough when to pull back so you don't walk out. They know when to tone it down, and when they've got you back in that grasp, they ramp it up again. Listen, you know it.
It was horrendous. Let's put it that way. But so I made a plan to leave. So what I did was I booked a plane trip to Germany on I can remember the date, November 7th, 2017. And the plan was I was going there for a couple of days, and then when I come back, she would have been at work. I was getting all my stuff and going. I got it all planned, ready to go. On the day on November the 7th, 2017, I arrived at the hotel in Berlin, and I got a phone call from my ex. She told me she was pregnant.
Ah, okay.
And I was happy and sad. I had both emotions. I thought, I'm going to be a dad, but I was sad because I thought, I'm connected to her now for the rest of my life, but I've got responsibilities. So I came back to the home. I went to the scans. I was then present at the birth. And it was a wonderful day. I can remember it like it was yesterday. I was very emotional when the child was born. And I fell in love with that child immediately. And then about 2 or 3 months in, I noticed that when it came to resemblance, I could see my ex, but I couldn't really see much of my features. And I just put it down to that some kids will look more like the mum, or some kids will look more like the dad. So I didn't actually doubt I was the child's father. I just noticed it. I just noticed it. It was in the background. And it didn't really upset me. I just came to that conclusion. I just thought some kids do. You can see it in people. You meet brothers and whatever, and one more like the mum, and so on and so on. So I just didn't put 2 and 2 together at that point. And then when the child was about 6 months old, I left the relationship for the last time. And Frank, it was quite amicable. It wasn't a big. She didn't really put much of resistance, and I call it token resistance. But I carried on being that child's dad. I was round there 4 or 5 times a week. I was voice calls. The child would stay at mine.
So it's quite an amicable separation, yeah?
Oh, no, if anything, we got on better. We got on really well when we didn't live together. It was a great time, and I fell deeply in love with that child, deeply in love.
I actually do, yeah.
And then, I did. It was just unimaginable how much I loved that child. But then when the child would have been about 15 months old, I was in one of the pubs that I used to go to, and a couple of people said to me that they doubted that child was mine. And I just said, "Oh, you're being ridiculous. Of course not." I mean, I had no idea that around the time of conception that my ex was in a relationship with anybody else. I had no idea, none whatsoever. So in my head, I thought, I remember thinking, "Oh, how could she do it?" But anyway, we move on. And around April 2022, no, I'm going to go 2 months earlier than that. My first real doubt, it was February 2022. My first real doubt was, she said something very, very odd to me. She said, I can't use the name, the child goes up to people in the park and calls them dad. And I thought that was a very, very odd thing to say. And that's really where it all started.
That is odd.
And I remember it was a really odd thing. I mean, now I realise why she said that. It's obvious if you think about it. I think that she'd introduced the child to his biological father before I knew I wasn't. Let's put it that way. I can't prove it. I can't prove it beyond reasonable doubt, but probably I think that's where that came from. So if the child saw him and said, "Dad,"
you wouldn't get suspect.
She's already told me. Well, it goes up to people in the parking lot, but that was really where it all started. And then 2 months later, April 2022, I took I've always taken photographs of the child in my car and playing football and whatever. And in this particular photo, I didn't notice it when I took it. It's only when I looked at it. I looked at the child and I could see the way the child looked, I couldn't see any resemblance to the mother or me in this particular photo.
Right, okay.
And my head went west. And it was during lockdown, and I thought, I've got to get a DNA test now. It was during lockdown. I said the wrong year just previously. It was 2020. So I wasn't working at the time because I'd been in damaged my shoulder. So I had to save up to get a at-home DNA test. And I did the DNA test in May 2020. And even up until the result coming, I thought the child was mine. I thought this was my brain putting 2 + 2 and getting 5.
Okay, so how were you dealing with it emotionally at the time? What was it like? Because obviously you're still trying to function day to day, but what was it like inside, in your heart? What was going through your mind every day?
It was horrible. It was the worst. Because it was during lockdown, they couldn't turn these tests around very quickly. So you were waiting a lot longer than you would now. It's a couple of days now. Then it was about 10 days, I think this one took. It was horrible. I couldn't sleep. I felt sick. And I genuinely believed that child was mine up until that. I thought, this is just my head. I've got it all this wrong. It's just,
Paranoia, yeah.
So I got the result. I can remember the day, May 15th, 2020, 4:30 in the afternoon. There you go. And I opened that email, and the second I read the bottom, there's quite a lot of analysis it does, and it says at the bottom 0%, and I felt like I'd been shot in the stomach.
Wow.
I felt like I'd been shot in the stomach. My mother, she was there, and I'd never, ever, ever, ever seen her that upset in all my life.
Wow.
She broke down, and it was horrendous. It was a horrendous I can remember it vividly.
Mm.
Now, I called my ex, and I remember saying to her, look, and do you know what? I was really, really, really rational and calm, even though I was deeply upset.
So you
And I
called her
said,
right immediately in that moment. You called her.
I called her about 10, 15 minutes after, and I said, you need to come round. We need to have a chat. And she was like, why? What's wrong? I said, no. I said, please just come round. She was out. She was, I don't know, whatever she was doing. And then she just got it out of me. And I said, well, I've just done a DNA test, and it's just confirmed that the child isn't mine. She just slammed the phone down. Didn't even answer.
Mm.
And then she sent me a couple of messages saying, I don't believe you. Show me the results. So I did.
Mm-hmm.
And then I managed to get her on the phone again, and she was so angry. She was fuming
At you.
at me. Yes. And she came round, and she basically implied that I'd done a fake DNA test. I'd somehow doctored the test, and she wanted another one. Yet in the fallout after it, she wouldn't give consent to another one until we did get a second one in the end, but it confirmed the first one. And then we went through this little merry-go-round of she'd let my family see the child, but not me. And then I could, then I couldn't, then I could, then I couldn't, and it was just ridiculous. So my name, it's for anybody that is affected by paternity fraud. I will say that getting your name removed off the birth certificate is a very, very straightforward process in the UK. Not in other countries, but in the UK, it's called a declaration of parentage, and it is a very, very straightforward process if you do happen to find yourself in this. And I can help you with that if anybody needs that help. And to this day, I'll never understand what I've been through. I'll never understand why she did that.
Yeah.
I never will. I never will. I mean, after it happened, I was suicidal. I was deeply traumatized. I don't feel suicidal now, by the way. I'm just saying at the time, it was probably the lowest point of my life. That.
So how did you? Okay, look, I can only imagine the devastation and that type of deception. The word is the trauma and the pain, and that is caused by that level of deception. And when you've loved the child like that and bonded to then have that be taken away in this manner, I can only presume every awakening second must have been painful. So how did you get through? How long were you in that fog and that trauma for? How many years? And how did you tell us how you got through it? I mean,
I'd say the emotional pain was really the most intense for about 2 years for me. That's a real intense. I'm still in pain now, and I learned to live with it. I can live with it now. At the time, it was those first 2 years. It was very, very difficult. And one way I can try and explain how this feels, and it's very strange. It's like a living bereavement.
yeah,
You're grieving for somebody
that's still alive.
who is still alive, who is oblivious as to what's gone on, and the person who you're grieving for, you can't see, and you've done nothing wrong. It's
Okay.
like we've told this child is mine, and our family thought they had a grandson, a nephew, cousin, and then all of a sudden it's been discovered that's a lie, and then disappears.
See, the thing is, Mark, I'm trying to. There's the problem with this now. There's 2 or 3 angles to this. Okay, so how old was the child when you discovered? Was it 15 months when you done the test, or was it later on?
He was 8. Child was 18 months.
So
No. 21 months. 21 months. 21
So
months.
20, so nearly 2 years from a baby, you've bonded with this, this baby effectively, small, looking up at you with those innocent eyes, most important person in that child's world as well, poor kid, right? Yeah. So 2 years, and then the thing with this situation now, so when you lose, and then you had the problem, not just the emotional devastation of finding out this is not your child. That's one pain. The other pain I can see straight away is the deception. And then the third pain is you've actually lost contact with the child as well. So you're grieving. This is what I'm trying to say. It's threefolded. So least, and for your family, I think the bereavement is real because they bonded, not just bonded with the child, but the fact is, if you have no relationship with the child, they have no relationship with the child ever. So that their bond, they're going through a living bereavement. That child's dead to them. They've got nothing. They got no right. I mean, a father doesn't have much right. So imagine if a child ain't related to you, got nothing. Like, do you know what I mean? So they've lost a grandchild that they thought was there. So they're going through a bereavement. You're going through the deception, the relationship, the deception in the relationship, the trauma and the pain of the marriage, and this situation. Finding out this child is not yours, that pain right there. And then ultimately, because you've bonded with that child, you've still got emotion, you're a human being, you're still a father, ultimately the loss of contact. So you're fighting on so many fronts. And I mean, I can only imagine the trauma and the pain. So tell us more about those 2 years of how you then communicate with the ex. Did you have contact or not? What you did to get through the long days and nights. I mean, 2 years is a long time, yeah.
So what happened was after that test, she was playing games then. So she was like, right, your family can see, but you can't. And then she relented. Then we can see him. I can see him.
What did your family say about that? So when she said your family could see, what was the family saying about this? What was your family saying about all this situation? What was their take on it?
My mother took this the hardest in the family, alongside me. My mother is she was a nursery nurse, so she loves children. My mother very deeply. She's really, took this the hardest. So she was allowed to carry on seeing the child, but I wasn't for a bit, and then she changed her mind. This is typical type of behaviour from these types.
What was the reason for not letting you see the child? What was the reason? Like, was there a reason, or just like because I can sort of thing?
It was because I can, yeah. And then we got a few months in, and then we had an argument because I wanted to sort of discuss the future about what we're going to do about this. Because at that point, I'd never kept it quiet, so we just kept it. Very few people knew, just the family, and I think her family knew. Yeah, they did know. And I said, well, I'd like to sort of, if you like, de facto adoption. So in other words, I was already on the birth certificate, so I thought, well, we can, if you like, carry on and give him a good life. She wasn't having any of that.
Co-parent? Do you mean co-parent, or you said get back together?
No, in my head I was thinking, well, he's part of our family now. We love him. He loves us, and why not? But absolutely not. Unknown to me, she'd introduced him to the child's biological father. So in effect, the child was seeing his biological father and who now, I suppose, I was his stepfather by now, wasn't I?
Yeah.
So I'm now, unknown to me that was, and the whole situation was horrendous. I genuinely can't put into words how bad it was. So how did I cope? So I set up Paternity Fraud UK because I couldn't find any help out there at all. And I got as much information as I could about paternity fraud. In particular, a man that I'm going to mention is a guy called Carnell Smith, who is an American campaigner against paternity fraud. I've had 2 conversations with him. I actually spoke to him yesterday in our group meeting. He was a fantastic man. And his videos, and then he did a personal chat with me for 3 hours, which was, I needed it. he was an amazing guy. And I gained strength by speaking to other people who have been affected by paternity fraud. So I opened a helpline up and I said, look, if you've been affected by paternity fraud, I know what you've been through. You can speak. And it did. And people do ring me. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter.
So how often do you run this helpline? Is it evenings, weekends, or 24 hours? How does it work?
What people do is if they send me a message, and then I arrange a time, because I work full time as well, so I arrange a time when I'm not working for them to contact me, and then we do have a chat over. I do actually insist it is a phone call because it's too difficult to do it by text. I can't do it.
No, you can't.
I've had a few where they've said, "Can we talk?" And I can't do it. It's so complex. I need that phone call. I've heard some absolute horror stories on that helpline. That make my story look like a breeze in the park. I've had people tell me that they found out one gentleman, 4 of his kids were not his. All 4.
Yeah, man. How does that happen?
All 4. All 4. I've heard stories where child would have been sort of 7, 8 years old, and then the woman has just blurted it out in an argument. Oh, by the way, that child's not yours.
It's cold, man. Cold.
Nothing ceases to amaze me now in this, how evil these women that do paternity fraud. And I am at pains to say we know it's not all women. The stats on it are pretty difficult to get. It's difficult to measure this, as you can all imagine, for various reasons. So stats I've seen put it anywhere between 3% to 10% at the highest.
Wow.
Overall population. Now, I work on the basis of 5%. I see that figure quite a lot in the stats I've seen. So I work on the basis of 5% of children that are born in the United Kingdom have been told that person A is the father, when he's not, it's somebody else. Doesn't sound a lot until you start crunching the numbers, does it? Because 5% of what's the UK population? 69 million.
69 million, yeah. That's
million.
Yeah.
But it doesn't just affect the wrong father. It affects the child primarily. Then you've got the wrong father, a wrong grandmother, a wrong grandfather, a wrong uncle, a wrong auntie. You've got friends, surrounding friends, and then it affects the biological family.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, the man may have had an affair, which is usually the case, by the way. It's usually the married man who's had an affair. This is why they do it, because that man can't provide, or the man's gone to prison or something. Usually there's a reason like that. So the biological family is in turmoil. And I reckon one case of paternity fraud affects, on average, 25 people per case.
Wow.
So 3 million times 25, that's most of the population.
It's going to affect it'll affect the whole extended bloodline. Let's just say. So, okay, Mike, there's a lot to unpack here. I'm trying to digest it slowly, right? So let's go back to your situation for a second, if you don't mind, right? Yeah. So is that child in permanent contact with its biological father at the moment or not? Or did they have to
It's my understanding. Well, I can talk about this. I don't see why not. The child's biological father was seeing the child in secret because he was married.
Oh, great. Okay.
And then once the biological father's family found out, he has walked away. So the child unfortunately has. It's to my current understanding that the child has no contact with the biological father and their family.
So this child's effectively lost both its dads, biological and stepdad, the father that was there and the biological. Unfortunately, this poor kid Yes, my heart honestly goes out to that kid. And I take it you've got no contact, direct, indirect, nothing with that child, yeah?
Mm-mm.
So when's the
The mother
last
won't.
time? So what?
The
So
mother won't.
20. So that was about
Well,
20. It's
last
4 years
time
ago.
I had any in-present physical contact was 31st of October 2020, and then I did see the child on a video call in December of that year, and then that's it. I've not had any at all. So it's
Yeah,
4 years now.
it's tough, man.
And
Listen, mate, tough bloke,
there
mate.
is a day I don't think about that child. I dream about the child even now. Even now, what this woman has done to me will live with me for the rest of my life. I've no doubt about it. And my mother, and my father, and my brother, and my sister-in-law, and my little nephew, because we all love that child.
Okay, so let me try and understand, try and unpack this a little further. So if you wanted contact with that child, so you can't. So because you're not the biological father and now you're off the birth certificate, yeah, you've
Yeah.
got no case whatsoever to even file for access, nothing. You've got no rights whatsoever.
No.
You ain't got a hope in hell,
It's pretty
basically.
much the only way I could have had any contact with that child would have been with the mother's blessing, and she made it very clear, no.
Yeah, listen, this is a horror story. I mean, I can only label it as a horror story. But let's try and move along a little bit. Like, so, okay, like, obviously you deal with a lot of cases day in day out. You talk to a lot of people going through this and whatnot. You said this. Some women also can be a victim of paternity
Yeah.
fraud, but our majority of your cases men. Because I'm trying to think, like, you know,
We
for a
get
woman to be duped, it'd be very difficult for a woman to be duped in that manner. Like, do you know what I mean?
the women that I speak to on the helpline tend to be either wronged grandmothers,
Right. Okay.
uh, so it'll be the mother of
Extended
the man.
family.
Yeah, his extended family. It can be also. I've had a few where, say, the man has remarried, and then he found out from a previous relationship that the child is. Then the man's current wife can ring me for advice, because again, a lot of the men are so traumatized they got
Yeah.
to speak to me, which is a shame because I'm very good with helping people with this. But I get that. I understand it, by the way, that they do find it difficult to talk about. So then their current wife might ring me, and I'll still help them. And what I would say is that this just doesn't affect men. It does affect women who are, especially in the extended families. It does. It
Yes.
really does. I can tell you now, my mother is deeply traumatized by this. She didn't deserve this. None of us deserve this, what happened. Nobody deserves paternity fraud. It is truly evil.
Yeah. No one deserves that. Yeah.
No.
Okay. A question someone's asked in the comments, which I'm quite curious about. So, where does she stand on CMS? So I take it CMS. Once you're off the birth certificate, child maintenance services can't come after you for anything for that child,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
they'll go
So
after the biological father. So does he have to then be, if you get removed off the certificate, does he then have to be added on, or does she, the ex, have to add him on? How does that work?
So CMS, I was liable for any payments, which we never went down that line because we had our own private arrangement. But as I'm now not on the birth certificate, there's no liability from me. So the biological father is now
Liable for
liable
CMS.
for all if my ex decides to go. I don't know whether if they have or they haven't. She's ever done that or not. It's hard to say, but yeah, I'm not liable for that.
Okay, right. So look, what I'm thinking is, look, men, like I said, this is just another avenue. If you look at the whole family unit, family court system, the laws in place, and then this paternity fraud, men are the biggest losers here, ultimately, in this sort of arena, let's just say. Now, we know the narrative that is being pushed out, and before anyone says that, What about abused women? Listen, on Disqualified Dads, we support the whole alienated family, the kids, the alienated. This is what we're here for. It's not about the gender doing the abuse. I've helped women who have abused their partners and lost contact with their children. I said, whatever happened in the relationship happened. Your child shouldn't miss out on both loving parents, regardless. So I've helped unite women, mothers with their children as well. So it's about the children. The children shouldn't miss out, number one. So the point I was making is like that with this situation that we have with the current laws in place. I mean, we could say they're heavily. We know where the law's stacked here. It's against fathers. We know where beyond the law, society is stacked against fathers. Like I said, you're talking about paternity fraud. The family court system is still a secret court. People are still waking up to that. When they enter it, they realize the devastation. So this is just another add-on of more devastation. So with the narrative coming from mainstream media, society as a whole, no one is interested, including other men, don't seem to care about other men. How do you see this getting out? Or I mean, well, the question I'm asking is, because of the mainstream narrative, the societal position, and we keep calling the gender wars. It's not a gender war. The gender war is over. It's a one-sided massacre, unfortunately, and we are just being massacred left, right, centre. So when they keep saying again, like someone mentioned in the comment, believe all women, they keep pushing the more women. This issue after lockdown, where they're saying more women, unfortunately, are unalived in the family home than ever. There's one woman every so many hours is a victim of abuse in the family home. They keep pushing that narrative out. Now, when they keep pushing that narrative out, what chance do you think we have? Falsely accused network, paternity fraud. What chance does that have to counter that narrative that is coming out aggressively? This ideology with modern sort of, women are suppressed in the workplace, and it's affecting. Look, I tell you, Mike, I'm sure you deal with a lot of communities and backgrounds. This has affected cross community, culture, religion, background, flipping age. This is do you see what I'm saying? So how do you see this? And I had a debate with someone earlier today of how do we bring about how do we bridge this gap to even create exposure to bring change? Where do you see this? Give me your take on the whole thing.
I think, and we'll talk about men's rights and men's welfare generally, and then I'll tell you what my idea is. I've got two. I think we've got a lot of little great organisations out there. Honestly, they're fantastic. Mine's Paternity Fraud UK is a small one, but we're doing something very unique. It's the only one that I know of in the UK, but there's other ones, great little organisations out there. Problem we've got is that we need to, in my opinion, form a union as such.
Yes.
Which would be an overarching. Every little organisation would still carry on running exactly how they are. That wouldn't change. But what we need to do is unite, collaborate, get round a table, and organise and look at funding. And my idea would be to form a type of men's welfare union with organisations as members, but also individuals, men and women. And we'd have one structure where people could go to that could get known in the press. I'm going to say this publicly. I'd love Mike Buchanan to lead it if he's watching. If you know him, he used to be the leader of Justice for Men and Boys political party. If I could vote for somebody, it'd be him.
Okay.
That's my idea. We all need to collaborate together and get together around the table as organisations, doing what we're doing, which is all fantastic.
Just what's his name? Mike Buchanan.
Mike Buchanan. He's a gentleman who used to run Justice for Men and Boys party, and I'd love it if he was like a leader of it. He's got the presence, he's got the contact, he's got the charisma, he's got everything that I think would be great as a men's welfare union. So we could campaign on all sorts of issues that affect men, whether it be health, whether it be paternity fraud, false allegations, family court, parental alienation, and a whole host of other things that affect men. It's not just family court stuff. I'm thinking that's something I think we need to do as organisations.
Okay, let me just cut in there, because if I don't ask you now, I'll forget. So that's why I keep cutting in. So I apologise. Yeah. Now, the thing with that is I've been talking about the issue. So look, once I've only been in this space for a couple of years, I've only had to pick up these headphones and this camera because of sheer desperation and the real reality that this is just oblivious. The world is oblivious to this. There's no one really doing anything. Then you see all these other little organizations. So you guys understand. So I've looked at this with a fresh pair of eyes. So there's all these other little organizations going back all the way, that formed all the way back to Matt O'Connor, Fathers for Justice, when he started his campaign and whatnot now. And the thing with all of these organizations is, like, again, on the other side, Women's Aid, Women's Supports Group and all of that, they're all united. It's a solid, well-oiled machine. I mean, I have to give credit to the fact that how their commanders and generals have pulled this together, and that's why there's a massacre. I mean, we're half-time busy fighting. The men's group is so fractured. The thing is, you can't. And again, I said, look, Sean Buchanan from Equal Start. He's a campaigner for men and boys, and fights for justice and equality in society. And I've had this debate with him back and forth, getting the groups to work together, but you can't even get fathers to sign a petition. Like we can't even get 5,000 signatures. And then, like, classic in it, there was people in groups. Oh, what's the point? It make no difference. When we try and organize an event, no one turns up. This what I'm saying. The CMS march. I hate to say it, but the CMS march that split the difference. Volunteers have organized. You had celebrities like Alex Reed saying he's coming down with his military unit. All of that. The military veterans that are aliving themselves due to the CMS harassment. Not one military veteran turned up. And what's sad, and this is England, we were in Parliament, 15 guys turned up. They were brown. They were from a Muslim Father Support from like the 30 that showed up. So why don't I understand, where are these patriots, these military, these veterans? Do we not care about our veterans that are unfortunately left to rot? We keep talking about this and we love and will protect. Where are the people? I don't understand. Where are they?
I've noticed what you've observed. I've noticed it too, and I call it male apathy towards asserting their rights. And I can't explain it. I give you use that example as petition. I've noticed it. 5,700, I think.
If you're lucky, you get exactly. It's a disgrace.
And I can't understand. My head's going, wow, why only 5,700? But this is something we've got to come across. I know when I posted about it the other day, some people said it's not apathy, it's hopelessness. Maybe it's both. Maybe it's male apathy and male hopelessness, where guys are thinking, what's the point? Because no one's listening. But we've got to get noisy. We've got to unite all the little organs and noise. And I think maybe a welfare union may be the way to go ahead with that. But something else I would like to say is that we've got to show and get women who have been like the area I look at is paternity fraud, but all the other issues, to show that actually what's going on in the family court does affect women too.
Yes.
Negatively. And we need to be opening up.
They're being exploited. Look, the women that are involved in family court are being exploited for financial gain. It's as simple as they don't care about these children, right? They're being exploited, but because they're getting back at their ex, and again, it's that petty, because they're given the weapons to shoot at certain people, their exes and whatnot, they're happily going with it. And just to touch on that, you're right, look, and as far as the movement is concerned, it's not going to be the men, making noise that's going to bring the difference. It's the women standing with these men, the sisters, the mothers, the grandmothers, the aunties, the extended family of the children that have been alienated. And I say it to all of those women out there who have engaged in this, all of those that are supporting women who have engaged in this. You have sons in your family as well. You have nephews, you have younger brothers, cousins. They are going to be subject to the same system. And those women, like I said, that my children, they have like cousins from my ex's side, they're from their mum's side, all their cousins. It's a big family, bro. It's one of the biggest Asian families, like Indian families in the UK. Yeah, they got loads of boys in that family, loads of boys coming up. They have no idea the devastation that they're lining up for these kids, and and they're all good. The society as a whole will be affected, and is breaking down society as a whole. So this ain't my issue or your issue or his issue. And I'm sure, Mike, you might like me. You're not here for me or you. It's too late for us. You're not. You're here for your kids. You know what I mean, you're here for that little kid that you've had to leave behind. Do you see what I'm saying?
We're here for the future. We right now, if you're listening to this, I would say to any man who's been affected by anything, whether it's paternity fraud, false allegations, parental alienation, whatever else, get involved with. There's plenty of organisations out there, whether small ones or large ones. Get involved. Certainly, we need women who have been affected by these issues too. So, there's, like my example, my mother who is now affected by paternity fraud. We need women to come forward and say enough is enough. Just something I will like to mention about paternity fraud. It is actually against the law.
Right. Let's talk about this. Yeah, go on. Give us the insights into this.
Three laws. It's against the Perjury Act to name the wrong person on a birth certificate. But the research I've done has found 0 women have been prosecuted for that. There have been a small number of criminal prosecutions for paternity fraud, and it comes under fraud by misrepresentation. It can be prosecuted, but it's very difficult to prosecute. And the most common route people can get some justice from paternity fraud is in the civil courts under the tort of deceit, which is a very posh way of saying fraud. And there is, if you can prove the elements of the tort of deceit, and there's 4 elements of it, you've got to prove all 4 of them, then you will be compensated for only for emotional harm and distress. You're not going to get any money back for child support or whatever else. That's not going to happen. It is there, but what at paternity fraud we would like to see is DNA testing at birth for every single child that's born.
Mandatory DNA
So,
testing.
no one's being picked on. It's not going to be certain people. So it's going to be every child is tested with their alleged father. So then everybody knows the truth from the beginning. What that would do is it would deter any woman from thinking about doing this because they're going to get caught. And it would also give men the reassurance that the child they're going to put all this emotional, psychological, and financial investment in is actually their child. And let's just say it doesn't come back, it comes back and he's not the father, then that's a chat. He can make a decision, but he won't be able to get the birth certificate because he's not the biological father. The law's quite clear. You should be the biological father on that birth certificate, not just any random person. So
I think the devastation will still be there. But ultimately, there's still going to be a lot of heartache and pain. But yeah, I think something's got to give. I mean, okay, so Mike, what would you say? Carry on from obviously, like you said, we know the fathers' movement is fractured. They need to come together. So, how do you suggest, before we move on to your before your take on the rest of it, how do you suggest it comes together? What would you say to all the groups out there, all the different, everyone's got an organization. How do we pull them together? What are the logistical steps? And also, what is your message to the fathers at home that sit there and they leave it for someone else to do? Well, let him sign it, or someone else is going to feel it. I'll just pass it on, or don't take part, or don't show up, or don't feel like they can do anything or bring change. I mean, what would you say to that?
So the 2 questions Dave asked me. So the other groups, I would like us all at some point in the not too distant future to arrange a meeting. Do it by Zoom. You can do it. It's very easy to do this. And then we're all on the same page, aren't we? If you think about it, every group that I've come across, we all agree that that men's welfare, I'm going to say men's welfare, not right. Men's welfare in the United Kingdom is not taken seriously. It is disastrous. So we need to get together and meet. But my proposal would be then to form a union, but it would need leadership, structure, and funding, and that's where the problem comes in.
No, you're right. As soon as you mention funding, I think that's where I think.
Oh no, yeah. But the government are not going to fund us. It's going to have to come from fundraising between ourselves. That's where I see the next step of forming. Get a PR. People get somebody, a good leader to lead this and whatnot. And I think it can be done. It's just the will. I'd say to men what I call male apathy, or some people say hopelessness. I say it's both. I say, look, talk about your story to people. Do something rather than nothing. So if you're a man and you've been abused in a relationship, we know it's a big stigma about that. But I say to guys, talk about it still. I'm not saying everybody you meet in the day at the bus stop or whatever, but tell your story to people. I'd say get active. Find a group. If there's a group out there that mirrors what's happened to you, there's all sorts of different topics here and different ones for communities. Get involved with them.
Okay.
Sign the petition. Share the petitions. Don't hide away, because that is what they want you to do. They want you to be quiet and be a good boy and keep your mouth shut. And I say to guys, don't do that. That's what they want. But we as men's welfare groups is what we're all in. We've got to unite at some level and get round the table and coordinate and get some type of union set up and run. And it's got to be privately funded, guys. If you're listening, the government are going to give us nothing.
Okay, that's that. So let's move on. So carry on from where we left off answering that question. So firstly, obviously, father's movements is fractured, and obviously you've got the narrative that is pushed in society as a whole in all Western countries more than anything, and it's now hitting the Eastern and the Asian continents as well. Even the Middle East, this is now, so ideologies are heading to say, this. I know, nothing wrong. I'm all for it. I'm not against women empowerment. Before anyone thinks I'm against anything like that. I've got, and as I said to everyone, I've got 2 daughters, and I've got over 8, 9, 10 nieces. So listen, I'm all for it. I'm not against anything like that. Yeah, but the ideology that we're both talking about, how we're to secure the funding, to secure the laws in place, to leave men destitute, they have to have a villain. Every story has to have a villain. To have a good guy, you need a villain. So this narrative is being pushed to keep these laws in place, ultimately, and empowering one gender, divide the gender, oldest trick in the book, divide and conquer. So how do we continue to change this societal narrative? What do we do? I mean, on the broader question now, if you could touch on that a little bit. And also, before you answer the question, Mike, there's a lady in the chat talking about abusive men going by the name of SNTDV. What I'll do for her is, before we end the stream, I'm going to put the link in the chat for those who want to join the stream, speak to Mike directly. I invite that lady who's just saying we're all abusive men to come on and have a healthy discussion and a chat. So I invite you to come on SNTDV. I'm inviting you onto the stream to have a chat. I'll put the link in the chat. Please join us. Let's talk about this. Mike, sorry, carry on.
So, sorry for making me laugh. Yeah. What was the question?
Sorry, my question is, how do we fight that broader narrative where they've justified all of these atrocities against men, where men have no voice, no outlet other than to unalive themselves, like the broader societal narrative that's brought us here. As we know, the fathers groups, like you've answered that bit, we're fractured. We need to come together. Whatnot?
So,
the broader narrative, yeah.
It's silence. This is the problem. Men need to talk out about this much more than we are. So I say be noisy. I say tell your story. Seek help. Remaining quiet doesn't help. If you can imagine, for example, Carnell Smith telling his story about paternity fraud empowered me to talk about it publicly. So the more we talk about it and raise this issue, we're going to get to the point in about, I don't know, in the next 5 years, where there's going to be so many men talking about the abuse they've suffered in relationships that they can't ignore us for much longer. But they will do if we let them. So we've got to keep talk about paternity fraud, talk about false allegations, talk about parental alienation. The establishment are doing their best to deny parental alienation exists.
Yeah.
It is what is it? One prominent feminist who we won't name says it's unscientific. Unscientific pseudoscience, parental alienation.
Pseudoscience, that's the word they use. It's a pseudoscience.
Pseudoscience. It's utter nonsense. It's absolutely true. It happens. It happens. But we've got to change the narrative by being noisy. If we let them, if we just keep our mouth shut and whatever else, nothing will change. That's
no, fair enough. Okay, so look, Mike, let me ask you, on a more personal level. I mean, look, I'm Indian, Muslim, from a background where the family unit, culturally and religiously, the family unit the emphasis, the reverence that marriage used to have, unfortunately, in our community. It has it still more than, say, other communities, but it's breaking. It's breaking at the seams because this ideology has been infiltrated. It's a Trojan horse. They've put it in the center. It's breaking from within. We don't need any external force of breakers. It's breaking from within. So what I'll say to you is, sorry, 1 second, Mike. What I'll say is, Mike, as an Englishman, like, you know, if you look at your heritage, your history, the English families, because I knew people, English people, when I was a kid, already from broken families, and they've been suffering like via the family court. And my understanding of like, so where the English say they've been left behind and other communities are progressing, the government's left them behind, is because I think that community's been destroyed through the family court. Because I knew people when I was a kid going through that sort of thing. Yeah. Now I look back and I can see why the problems in your community, which are now in all communities, but I can see that it could stem. Do you think it stems from the family unit? I mean, the family court, the breakdown of the family unit. And you see, like, so when I look at English people, there's an element of they broke their families 40 years ago, 30 years ago, and this is only coming to the surface now. Yeah, you understand? Only since Matt O'Connor brought it to the forefront 20 years ago. Prior to that, and even then, that's pre-social media. So how many generations have been lost to that system, like the family court system, the laws in place?
Some people say to me, they go, the family court's broken. And I say, actually, it's not broken. It's doing what it's designed to do. It's doing its job to break up the family. It's not broken. It is doing what it's meant to do.
It's by design.
It's exactly by design. Obviously, I can't talk about cases that I'm aware of because of the law, but I'm like, I hear stuff day in, day out, and I think, oh my God, in any other court that would not be allowed, but that place it does. The UK family court, well, I can't talk about England and Wales, is nothing more than a kangaroo court set up by feminists, for feminists. Doesn't work in the child's best interest. It works in the mother's best interest. It's as simple as that. I'd say to guys, if you can avoid it, avoid it. If you can, wow, stay away from that. But the family's breaking down. I mean, I'm so shocked when I got into this, how the Muslim community has been affected. I always thought
big time.
The Muslim, big time. I always thought that the Muslim community would be that.
They were. Sort of, they are not. And they were. But the last 10 years now. And over the last 5 years, because you understand the ideology has been infiltrated again, because what it is now, and how can I put it? It's been done, like, for example, if I say to you, like, okay, Mike, whose fault is this? Like, so I say, look back and I think our predecessors, mine and yours, they let us down. Yeah. Because those men over the last 40 years, did they fall asleep, or was this just not an issue and divorce has just got more and more rife and now spreading to all communities? Like, for example, I'm going to bring a guy on shortly. He's a father of the Muslim Father Support Forum. He wants to speak to you directly, so you guys can have a chat. But this is now the ideology, what they've done, because look, it says in scripture, I don't know how well you're into scripture stuff, but they say once women fall, society will fall. Now, when you said that the evil that not all, some of these women are engaging and doing, I mean, we talk about abuse, man. I mean, you know, like I said, everything we said about the narrative about women being victims, this and that, I think if we talk about the amount of abuse that men are going through and the type of emotional abuse, the coercive control and the emotional abuse, and the men that are suffering in silence is just, I don't know what scale that is. I mean, it's on a different scale.
I'm at the point now when I speak to men, I think virtually every man that I know has suffered some form of abuse, maybe not in the relationship they're in, but it may be in the past. The abuse of males in the United Kingdom at a huge scale, and it's not talked about, swept under the carpet, minimised, ignored, laughed at, and by us, I keep saying this to even the guys in the group, talk about it, make noise, open that, don't keep quiet, because that's what they want. That's what they want you to do.
Mike, Ahmed from the Muslim Father Support Forum has just joined the stream. I think it'd be good for you guys to chat. So I'm doing my bit to connect all these groups. That's me doing my bit right here. So let's bring him on without further ado. And Blondie 15, Blonde 15, I'll bring you on next.
Hi, Mike.
Hi, Ahmed. We spoke before.
I believe so. It was some time ago. I was recording. I think. Yeah, that's right. No, I've been watching your work. Excellent stuff. Listening to your story, absolutely, it's just heartbreaking. And I just put myself in your position, and a man that would go through this, and you just think to yourself, that's just a mind melt. I was going to use some other words there, but I won't. But it's just absolutely horrific. But also, what you spoke about your extended family, the sort of the paternal family, the impact it's had on them as well. Like, how do they reconcile that in their heads? That's just got to be absolutely crazy. Just because one thing we often talk about, like today, we've spoken a lot about the effect this has on men, but this also affects a lot of extended family, so brothers, sisters, and obviously grandparents, especially grandmothers. And that they're suffering in silence, and not many people are sort of stepping up and voicing their side of things. Where your family at right now with all of what's gone on?
So my mother, out of the extended family, has been deeply affected the most by a long way. Her mental health she's suffering badly with this. And certainly I'd say the other women that are in our group, because the Paternity Fraud group, there's men and women in that one. We add everybody in, because as far as I'm concerned, if you're affected by paternity fraud, that's fine. The women are suffering too. They've lost a grandchild. They've lost a niece or a nephew, and the pain is exactly the same for them.
Yeah.
And like I said to Farouk earlier on as well, this is what we need to be highlighting. These issues do affect women too.
Yeah.
So
they won't listen
to me, but the politicians will listen to women.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. But I think one of the points you made earlier has a lot of value in that everybody needs to start talking. So obviously we spoke about the Muslim community, and I think essentially, I was one of the first voices on the scene from the Muslim perspective, where I brought my story to the community. We'll get a lot of backlash. We'll get the standard comments of the whataboutery, what about abusive men? You men are abusers, and da 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 da. Like, I just why is it that? Oh, and the other one that's always my favorite is there's always two sides to a story, which is fine, which is true. But the thing is, when women speak their truth, nobody ever says, what about the other side? So when a woman stands up on a stage, and they do this in domestic abuse forums and whatever, nobody ever turns around and says, yeah, but what's his side of the story?
Not interested,
but yet, they happily do this to men. They'll come on, even now you saw in the chat, this SDTV lady, I'm assuming it's a lady, might be a breath actor, but anyway, and you feel like, and to be honest, I've spotted her in comments before. I'm going to assume it's a woman, but yet you feel compelled to try and shut us down. But that's the power of speech, and what Mike's talking about, by us raising our voices, because they want to shut our voices down. They don't want the truth to come out. And so the point you made there about raising our voices is extremely important. And I implore all men, get your stories out there, get on a camera. Like what Farouk started off, he started telling his story, and it's snowballed into this. Mike's started telling his story, it's snowballed into a couple of entities. I started, it snowballed into the MFSF. Everybody start telling their stories, start talking about your experiences of family court, of your experience. I mean, we recently seen that chap, Robert Spencer, and that Cherie Spencer, where he was abused for like X amount of years, 4, 5, 6 years. And guy's lucky. That guy's absolutely lucky that he had like a baby cam in the house that was recording his abuse. And even there, when you look at the footage and you see her in the police station, she resorted to making domestic abuse claims against him. You were walking around with a knife in your hand. Yeah, I did that because he said he was going to kill me, so I went to get the knife to give it to him to get him to kill me. Are you like you can't make this stuff up?
Yeah, sounds like family court. Sounds like family court is.
yeah. And then this is what they do, and then this is the ridiculousness of it. And the thing is, well, we got this kind of closed stage. is deeply problematic. And I think by us bringing our stories to the front, I mean, everybody check yourself, check what you can and can't say. Mike's been very selective in what he's saying today. He's made sure that he's towed the right line. Everybody has to do that. Do the homework on that. But don't let the fear of them coming after you stop you from speaking your truth. And listening to you today, Mike, hopefully it's inspired a lot more people in that. So, I mean, because obviously you've been quite vocal about this particular element of what we're seeing. How do government bodies and society deal with this? What are they saying to you? Are they just giving you the pat back? It's a bit of a rough ride, and that's about it. Is there any action that anybody wants to step up, and any government body saying like, no, actually, we've got to do X, Y, and Z?
Very little. There's a few MPs that are quite sympathetic towards us, aren't they? There was one that brought up the idea of a minister for men. I can't the name.
Yeah, so Andrew Fletcher or something Fletcher or something, Ben Fletcher or something.
Somebody, I think he's a Yorkshire MP. But it's generally speaking, they don't. I'll be frank. I don't think this government gives a flying hoot about men's issues.
But is it a government issue, or would you say it's a societal issue as well? Because you can see a man crying his heart out, even if you look at the setup of it. So we spoke a bit about like family court and stuff, but even if you take a step back from that further, if you look at homelessness, majority are men.
90%.
Yeah. So here's an interesting stat that I found out, that there's about 3,800 refuge beds for women. How many do you think there are for men?
Less than 10, 20?
It's actually 40.
40.
Right? And that's down in London, because obviously they've got a big homelessness situation there. But generally across the country, so if a man gets kicked out of his house, so a woman makes a complaint, makes an allegation or whatever, they kick the fella out of the house. Either he's got to sleep in his car or out on the streets.
Literally.
That's it.
Literally, yeah.
Yeah. Right. For Farouk's been in that situation, and I can easily see that. And nobody cares about that side of it. But the moment you say women, women out on the streets, oh yeah, this, that, yeah, they'll have a big drive. Everybody will get behind it. And going back to your story, sort of, even though you felt that, even though you kind of had an inkling, did you still sort of have that kind of protective nature of like, well, no, it's the child, I've got to. Do you think you pushed it further back from your mind, even though it was kind of staring you in the face, but you just like, no, this is you were kind of convincing yourself?
Funnily enough, I think there's an element of that, because I remember. Like I said to Farouk, the child was about 3 months old when I first just noticed the resemblance really wasn't there. But I made excuses in my own mind, because part of me could not comprehend that a woman would do that, and that. So I'd have this belief going, oh no, she'd never lie about that. So the fact that the child looked more like mum that's all it is. But as it started to go through, and once it was there in my head, and I thought, no, I'm going to have to do it. So part of it was I had a false belief of my ex would never lie about me being the father, and that's what kept it going for a while, definitely.
So is the reason I kind of want to talk a little bit about that is because it's quite similar to a lot of men that are in toxic, unhappy relationships, and especially like in your situation, it's quite interesting because she knew she had you with the child. And essentially trying to exploit you, and it's just absolutely horrific. Yeah, and I think men need to start being a lot more honest with themselves. We need to start. Not only do we have to be vocal about our situations, but we have to bring a level of realism to our relationships. I'm not happy here, and when you're not happy in a situation, this is why maybe men are becoming. They're not giving their 100% in their relationship, and the women are expecting X, Y, and Z. And things are turning sour. And I think it's better to walk away from as a relationship. I mean, I think you had the gumption to do it, but unfortunately, she played one hell of a lie. It was absolutely, absolutely crazy.
Yeah, it was.
But yeah, I mean, I still, even now when I'm playing back what you just said.
Ahmed, it's very difficult, isn't it? I mean, I think before this happened to me, I wouldn't know what to say to a paternity fraud victim. I wouldn't have known. I mean, I do now. I know.
You wouldn't know the devastation inside. Yeah. The thing is, like you said, it's like with both of these things, you can empathise on the surface level, but the true level of devastation of the turmoil inside, where, like I said, people want to unalive themselves, that seems to be. It never seemed, just like the whole family court situation, it just, you can't see that, and we need to get that out, because like you said, if a young man goes through that now, we're all of a certain generation, maybe brought up differently, but that's what I'm saying. I see young men now, I see boys in the teenagers now, early 20s. I see my own nephews growing up, and I think, how will they deal with society by the time they get into relationships? Because it's only going one way. The tide is only one way. Like I said, the gender war is over. It's just a straight out, unfortunately, massacre by the looks of it. Yeah. What are these kids going to go through? How will they survive? And while I've got you both here as well, before I forget as well, can you both just maybe touch on some ideas of how we can collaborate, like different organizations, to unite, that collective strength as well? If you both could touch on that as well at some point. Sorry, yeah.
Well, I think Mike covered it quite well in that maybe, we've got to start meeting and having conversations. I mean, my take is this. I think as men, especially in this particular space, we've got to be able to listen to different voices. And I think that's the important bit. And I think we've got to start having a yes mentality. Let's do that. Okay, yeah. There's always 100 reasons for no. No, such an easy response.
Yeah.
But if one person has a yes, or there's one yes to something, go with it and make it happen. If it lands, it lands. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But you'll learn from it. You'll get better from it. Yeah. And I think I think we need to get people with that kind of mindset that are seeking the yes and that want to do, and get those people together. The people that don't want to do nothing, that want to stick to their saying, well, okay, leave them to it. That's always going to be there. But the people that have yes at the forefront of their philosophy in their approach, I think if we can get those people together, and then I'm really hopeful that we could actually put together a plan and raise something.
I would say to anybody listening, if to the other little organisations out there, we have to focus on our similarities. We want the same thing. We want men's welfare issues raised and corrected. And it doesn't matter. People might not like me. I'm quite gobby on Twitter. But you've got to go. We've got to get past all that nonsense. It's about focusing on what are these issues that we're all against. Let's unite under. Again, my head's thinking a union, a type of union where every organisation will carry on as they are. Nothing will change, but we all meet. We'd have I'm thinking of a leader. I like the idea of Mike Buchanan. If he's watching this, if I could vote for him, it'd be you, Mike Buchanan. And then really get these issues out there properly, all under one voice. Sort of. That's how I see it as an effective way, because the women's group have been doing that since the 60s. That's exactly what they did, and look how successful they've been.
Well, the thing is that the women's movement has a major advantage in money, in all honesty, because what you have is like the WA, I won't mention their names, but the WA, if you figure it out, get all the money from the government, then they trickle it down. So what happens, from what I've heard with speak to Sister Sally Ann Burris, is that if there's even if there's just like a refuge that's got a philosophy of just helping, where they don't really promote an ideology of acrimony or anything like that, but what they do is just want to help somebody that needs a bit of time out, space, and whilst they figure out their next moves. But obviously the WA have a different philosophy. So what they tend to do is they go to these types of places, these other types of refuge, that they're not all running the WA. There are some that are independent. They'll go to an independent one, they'll flash the cash, and then they'll kind of join the mothership, as it were, get indoctrinated, and that's what they're doing. That's so that all the money comes from them, and that's how they're building out their network or their tentacles, however you want to call it. So that's the biggest issue, because, like, if you look at it, I think the government are dishing out a fair few million to DWA for their initiatives, and you always see it when the football comes around. They do their little campaigns, and then they've got various speakers, they've got various celebrities promoting their stuff. In fact, they've got a celebrity right now who's an interesting one, because I remember distinctively seeing, let's quickly end off on this, but that her first husband actually went to Hyde Park and to speak about parental alienation and losing access to his daughter. Then her fourth husband, I believe it was, or her latest husband, a chap from America, he's actually got custody of the child, of their child. And he's been quite vocal. He's done a podcast. I'll have to send it to Farouk. You can have a look at it. And he was quite vocal in their relationship, and where he was classing her as the abuser, but yet she's fronting this particular this entity, and it's just madness. But this is where we are. Unfortunately, finance plays a big part in this.
That's the big problem. That is the big problem. We can't get any government funding. You might as well forget that.
Yeah.
So it has to be privately funded or not at all, and that's the issue where we're at. It really would have to, any type of union and other little organisation has to raise money.
Mike, my last question to you before I jet off is this. What motivated her to do such a heinous thing? Like, what was her motivation for this? Did you ever get to the bottom of that?
Well, she said, so I'll just sort of give her side, if you like. She said she genuinely believed that I was the father, which is utter nonsense. So I thought about her motivation, and I think because the biological father of the child was married also, that man was in no position to provide for that child, and also the fact that he was married, it would have caused too much pain for her as well, because then you'd have that. So I think it was quite straightforward. I was used to use my resources and my family's resources and time, and also to cover up the fact that she had an affair. That was what I believe was her motive for it.
Yeah.
Second it all came out, she just went, oh, what, she had nothing. She was just get rid.
Well, I mean, if she's saying that she was dead certain that it was yours, that doesn't make sense, because the fact that the child was meeting the father on the low, kind of, she knew what she was doing, and it's just absolutely even more. And I would think even to that, it's just absolutely mind bending. Mike, it's been lovely talking. Go on, finish off.
I was just about to say, yeah, I genuinely believe that the biological father knew before I did. Definitely.
I think so too. But Mike, it's been lovely talking to you. Farouk, excellent work as well. Again, my friend.
Yeah, Ahmed, thank you for coming. I'll catch you another time.
All right, Brad. Take care.
Oh, I cut him off a bit earlier there. Right, Mike, I've got one more person here. Let me bring them on. I don't know who they are. Let's see what they got to say. Blonde 15, I'm going to bring you on. I'm going to turn on your mic. Here we go.
Oh, hello.
Hi.
Hi.
This is I know this person. This is can I name you? Yeah.
Yeah.
This is Claire Hobson. She's director of Falsely Accused Network and is a paralegal lawyer.
Right. Okay. Good stuff. Glad to have you here. Thank you for joining.
So just a couple of perspectives. As a woman, if my ex came to me and said he wanted a DNA, me being me, I would frog march him to the clinic to prove I'm not lying. And that's a key issue. I think if you've got nothing to hide as a woman, then what's the issue? In everyday life, we're accused of things and we just shrug it off because we know we're telling the truth. So one of the biggest things that impact your life, why wouldn't you want to confirm the truth? Because as women as well, we do have an element of wanting to be right. So if you did that DNA test without issue, and it turned out that, obviously, say, for example, in Mike's case, he was the father, knowing the background of his case, his ex probably would have been like, I told you, I wasn't lying. And that is, I think that's where a lot of the obscurity comes in, because women don't want, women are the first to accuse a man of cheating, but they don't want to acknowledge their own cheating.
Okay, can I ask you a question? So what was your name again?
Claire.
Claire. So Claire, let me ask you a question again. I mean, look, you know, as a society, I mean, where we have ended up where everything is, well, men cheat, women cheat. Look, there's good people and bad people in all walks of life and society, but we've stripped this division back down to the gender. So look, we take color, race, creed, religion. There's all of these things still being played out in society by certain politicians to gain favor here, there, whatever. Yeah. But this is, we strip back to the core basis of humanity, divide the gender, men and women. We're one race. So how is it that society, or most Western societies, ultimately, they're pushing this to the point where incentivizing one gender? You obviously work in this area. Men have fallen so far behind that we've got no voice. You see the horrors that are caused now. They may be physically bigger and stronger and told to suck it up, but you're on the front line. You see the horrors that we're facing ultimately. How do we get here? I mean, what is to be done, do you think?
I think, and I've said this to a lot of guys in the group, women aren't afraid to make their voice heard. They, no matter however they want it to be heard, they are not afraid to make it heard. And this is the problem. And I get, obviously, it's a trauma. I've supported and helped a lot of these men, and it's a trauma. It's a rebuilding your life. But if you don't say it, it'll never get said. So if you don't go to your MPs, if you don't go to like support these petitions and things like that, no one's ever going to know what thousands, like throughout the world, millions throughout the world, sorry, are suffering.
Okay, fair enough. No, you're 100% right. And I think even with my own experience where that when you're dealing with that sort of character, I won't even say woman, it's just when you're dealing with that sort of person, they're not scared to make a scene where you're trying to hide away. So they've got leverage. And in these relationships, I'll just put a little red flag out there for all the men. When you get into these relationships, early on in the relationship, they will make a big song and a dance and a drama about something to establish control. And then for a quiet life, or to make sure she never makes a scene again, you start towing the party line head down. That's how control is established. But Claire, when you're in circles, say with your girlfriends or other women and other women in the field or in your personal life, do you see this ideology that's been penetrated even in all communities? That are you always arguing with, say, your girlfriends about like, no, like with this, like, yeah, men are victims as well, and say women can be real, say, real bad as well, or real bitches as well, sort of thing. Do you have this in your personal life when you're dealing with other women as such?
Yes and no. But I think when I say no, because my friends know what I do, they know a lot of the people I support are men. So I will present the argument. It's a two-sided coin. Women can be abusive, and again, I've got friends that have witnessed abuse themselves, and I've seen it around them. So it's not like they're just saying it. Obviously, my friends will tell me, and I'll know. I'll give them the advice, knowing obviously they'll come to me because they know I know it. So whereas I would say more of a bit of an outside circle, I have been around people where they will try and push that narrative that it is a, I suppose, gender bias approach, and it shouldn't be like that. I think someone mentioned it before, the prep manager, Richard Mason, he was a millionaire. He was still victim of this situation with all the money in the work, like the money that he had. So what hope does the everyday man have if someone with all that money? And I think that links into one of the points I want to make. One of the key issues, like Mike raised it, are finances. Because if you're just the everyday Joe working 9 to 5, what hope have you got fighting essentially part of a system with no money for solicitors? And even some paralegal Mackenzie friends charge extortionate prices. So even on that sense, when you go to someone that you think is support you on a lower income, they can rip you off. And that's the problem. It's like, who do they turn to?
Absolutely. All right, Claire, I've said so much information going through my head. I'm gonna fire 1 or 2 questions out, just try and get the information out there before we stop, right? Yeah. So look, I get this from a lot of fathers. Look, a father finds himself in a situation, he's still in the family unit, he's got his kids there, but similar to what Mike said, the personality disorder, you're dealing with someone who's volatile, who's not scared to make a scene, who could come up with an allegation any day tomorrow. And it's a very difficult, even for me when I'm advising fathers on what they should do at that stage, because fathers are very reluctant to come out with this or place allegations, because they see this as a mother of their child. They don't wish her any harm, and they don't even think of it. It doesn't even cross their mind. Yeah. But how do you safely exit that environment of the family home with your children's contact intact without, getting a non-mol landed on you or abuse allegations? What are they to do? Now, before you answer, Claire, I've said you just stay there, collect evidence, make a log, get recordings if you can when she's abusing you, or something, get anything to give you some leverage. But what is your advice to those fathers who are in that hot seat right now? They don't know what to do, where to turn. They're stuck between a rock and a hard place.
So I'll answer that in different formats, but it will get to the point. So essentially, the first initial part of establishing paternity the application process is actually quite simple. It's not difficult to do in the court process. The difficulty comes in when the other party starts disputing it. In any event, it gets to the point the court will order a DNA and then it will be determined. With that, the father comes off the birth certificate, any kind of rights that the other party might claim for financial assistance is all gone based on this order. So, answering the other aspect, so you don't need to be on a birth certificate to determine that you're a father. The birth certificate gives you the rights. It can be implied that you're the father by contact, things like that. So in the past, I supported stepfathers where this has occurred, and that person might have gone to court and maybe gone, well, I want to see this child. So there's an implied meaning that if this person has a relationship with the child, it would be the court's decision on whether that relationship should continue. Now, obviously, in Mike's case, that was the initial attempt. But as he said, obviously, it's at that point the allegations would come. So that's the hurdle.
Okay. So were you going to say anything more on that, Claire?
I was just going to say, obviously, and then it becomes a point on the process of determining those allegations.
Okay, so look, there's only one problem that I've come up with all of this now. Yeah. So look, you find out, you've been raising a child up to the age of, say, 2 years old, 4 years old, 6 years old, 8 years old. Now, this is a long period. This is a big chunk of the child's life and the so-called stepfather in question now. Yeah. If you find out, even if you're in that relationship, you find out after a significant amount of years, you've got a bond. This is your child ultimately, yeah, in an emotional sense, If you then find out this is not your child, and then you try and you remove yourself voluntarily off the birth certificate, are you not, as a father, then you lose out ultimately, because then you'll reduce your rights to have access. So my point is it not in your interest, if you want to keep contact with the child, don't push that, stay on the certificate, then you can push for access.
Yeah, in a typical sense, but parental responsibility can be determined in court. If a court order says this person is the father and therefore holds the relevant parental responsibilities, they don't need to be on the birth certificate.
So but that's the financial thing then. So okay, so look, you've raised a kid till 5, 6, 7, 8. You want to be part of their life. This is already a bad situation. If you remove yourself from the birth certificate, you are a father. Look, it's very difficult for a biological father to see a child who's lived and grown up with. Yeah. So ultimately, what chances a guy who happens not to be the father? So what I'm saying is, if he remains on the birth certificate, but they can then say determine. When you say parental responsibility, the financial responsibility, CMS can go after the biological father after that, but you can still remain on the birth certificate and keep that position where it may strengthen your case in family court for access.
Yes. So essentially, it would be a completely different process then. So you wouldn't kind of seek to remove your name off the birth certificate. You would then go to the typical seeking contact with the child route. If it formulated that you wanted a DNA test throughout that matter, then that would form part of those proceedings. So you'd essentially be skipping a step. Even though you might know the truth, you are established to the court, you've got to develop relationship, you don't want that to be denied. And again, the key issue in all of this is choice. So the female makes a choice when she does what she does and takes that risk. And then a choice is taken away from the man. So when a man wants to continue a relationship with a child, like say, if he spent time with that child for 5 years, he's then making that choice to want to be a parent. Because I'm a very big believer in you don't have to give birth to a child to be a parent. So, it can take a village to raise a child. So again, in Mike's case, this child's been impacted by having very little family involved now. Whereas before that, if that had remained the case, he'd have had a great family involved.
Absolutely.
So again, it comes down to choice. And this is where, going back to an earlier point, the element of the tort of deceit comes in. It's the recklessness. And that is the hardest part to prove, because it's trying to prove that person was reckless to knowing their actions, essentially what they're doing, would create that impact.
Right, I see. Okay, Claire, what we'll do is I'm going to have to bring you on another time, and we've got more time. It's just cool. It's gone on quite long. What we'll do, we'll touch base in the future and go through it a little bit more methodically. Do you want to just give a shout out to yourself on what you do to anyone out there, like with your paralegal services, while I've got you in stream, and where they can get hold of you, your email address or something?
So people can access me through the website at familylawparalegal.co.uk. It's as simple as that. I am a Northwest-based paralegal Mackenzie friend. I've done this for 10 years, and again, if anyone wants to contact me regarding any of this, then obviously you've got the details. I'm happy to chat to people.
Lovely. Mike, I think time has been ticking on. We'll have to wrap it up here. Mike, listen, thank you for your input, Mike. Thank you for coming on the stream. Thank you for sharing your story. And listen, I just got to take my hat off to you. You're a tough bloke, mate. You're a tough geezer to go on through what you've done, survived. Like I said, you're a testament to the human spirit, the spirit of man. I say to all men out there, do not give up, do not give in, continue, battle on, use your pain and trauma to do good in the world, to good for society, good for the generations to come. Mike, I appreciate you. I respect you. I respect everything you do. Just keep at it, and we'll collaborate wherever possible. And I'll send anyone towards your help. But before you go, Mike, do you want to put your email or your details out there if someone wants to get hold of you, in touch with you? Do you want to just give your email a shout out?
By Paternity Fraud, you can contact us on paternityfrauduk@gmail.com. That's our email. False allegations is falselyaccusednetwork@gmail.com, and our website is falselyaccusednetwork.co.uk.
Guys, reach out to Mike if you need help, support. Reach out to Mike Connectors Network. Mike, thank you again, and I shall speak to you soon, Mike. Respect you. Guys, that's been quite a long stream. I just want to say no super chat. I'm disappointed in the chat. There's no super chats. And where's the super chat and super thanks? If you want to support Disqualified Dads, look, there's a link in the description. There's a PayPal link. Sponsor, donate, whatever you can helps keep this channel on the road. Helps us keep the information coming out. And going forward, we're going to have a live stream every Sunday evening around 8:30. Going forward in the future, like clockwork, live streams every Sunday, 8:30. I'll be bringing on different guests to try and address different angles to this whole situation. I'm also trying to plan with Mr. Ryan another question and answer with Mr. Ryan and Mackenzie around financial orders. A lot of people have asked for it, how to best protect yourself, what to do, go through some of the forms and whatnot. So we'll be covering that and a lot more in the future. Make sure you tune in every Sunday evenings around 8ish. Thank you for watching Disqualified Dads. Like, subscribe, follow and share.